Lesson 2.1, Integers and Absolute Value. In this chapter, we will be studying integers, and you will not be allowed to use a calculator for any of your homework, tests, or quizzes in this chapter. So first of all, what is an integer? An integer is a positive or negative number with no fraction or decimal. For example, 5, -8, 0, 2, or -3. As long as there are no fractions or decimals, the number is considered an integer. Opposites are numbers that are in the same distance from 0 on a number line, but in different directions. So in this example, you can see with the number line, we have the number 4, which is 4 units to the right of 0, and we have -4, which is also 4 units, but to the left. These are opposites. Not to be confused with absolute value. You may remember this from 6th grade. The absolute value is a number's distance from 0 on a number line. We don't care which direction it's in, we just care how many units or spaces it is from 0. So you hopefully have seen this before. The symbol for absolute value are these straight lines with a number inside, like in these two examples. Not to be confused with parentheses, because those are curved, or brackets because they are squared off with the extra lines on them. Absolute value is just asking you how many spaces from 0 is this number on a number line. So, for example, the absolute value of 2 is how you would read this, and that is 2 because it's 2 spaces from 0. And this is the absolute value of -2, which is also 2 because it is also 2 spaces from 0. So notice this is not asking for the opposite, it's asking how many spaces is it from 0 on a number line. So let's try a few examples. The absolute value of -11 would be 11. The absolute value of 7 is 7. The absolute value of -6 is 6. Whoops, the absolute value of 3 is 3. And then for these last two, just to throw in a little bit of a challenge for you, this has the negative sign on the outside of the absolute value bars. So you actually are going to take the absolute value of 1 first, which is 1, and then bring down the negative because it's outside, and you get -1. Similarly here, you have negative on the outside. So the absolute value of -18 is 18, and then we bring over the negative sign that's outside and get -18. Fill in each blank with less than, equal to, or greater than. Number 1, 4 is greater than -8. Number 2, the absolute value of -33, which is 33, is equal to the absolute value of 33. They're both 33. And number 3, -5 is less than the absolute value of -2 because that is +2. Okay, so you actually can evaluate expressions with absolute value symbols. They act in the same way as the parentheses in the PEMDAS. Meaning they're done first. So again, we're still not using exponents, but I want to show you a few examples where absolute value is evaluated first, just like parentheses. So you see here we have 2 absolute value bars. We're going to evaluate those absolute values first. So the absolute value of 9 is 9, and the absolute value of -3 is 3. And then we can bring down the subtraction and the addition, and then order from left to right. 9 minus 3 is 6, and 6 plus 5 is 11. Okay, let's take a look at one other example with absolute value in an expression. So in this case, go ahead and replace the x with the -6. And again, we evaluate the order of using the order of operations. So the parentheses comes first, which in this case is absolute value. So the absolute value of -6 is 6, and then what comes between these two is multiplication. So in the original problem, there's nothing between the 2 and the absolute value bar, which is the same as multiplying. And we do 2 times 6, which is 12, and 4 plus 12, which is 16. Okay, one last reminder, opposites and absolute value are not the same thing. So just be careful that when you are seeing these absolute value bars, you are not just writing down the opposite of the number that's inside. Remember, absolute value is asking how many spaces is that number from 0. Okay, and if you're looking for a little challenge, think about this. Explain why the absolute value of x plus y and the absolute value of x plus the absolute value of y are not the same. And the reason is because of the order of operations, or PEMDAS. In this first example, we'll call this example A. In example A, the first thing you would do would be to add, and then the second thing you would do would be to take the absolute value. In example B, the first thing you would do here is to take the 2 absolute values and then add second. If you pick 2 values for x and y to try them, you could see that they don't give you the same answer necessarily, always, unless they're both negative, or excuse me, unless they were both positive numbers. Okay, and that is the end of lesson 2.1, integers and absolute value.